Twinmotion, so for those of you who have never seen Twinmotion, or maybe just heard about it in, I guess, passing, or maybe some advertisements, Twinmotion is a visualization platform really for all AEC professionals, as well as really any 3D modelers. You can bring your 3D files from Inventor, SolidWorks, SketchUp, Rhino, you name it. If it can be modeled as a solid, as a 3D object, we can bring it into Twinmotion one way or another and create some pretty stunning visualizations from it. So one thing that's great about Twinmotion is not only does it give us some really beautiful still images, but it also has the ability to do animations, walkthroughs, panoramas, so those 360-degree views that are becoming pretty popular in simple VR formats, as well as 360-degree VR videos, so kind of taking that static point panorama and making it into a video. So if you've ever seen on Facebook or YouTube, they have those 360-degree videos that there is sort of a recorded path that you might be following, but you can use your mouse and look all around. So this program can do that. And it does have a one-click to immersive VR, which, I can show you how to get to that, but we can't obviously show you how that exactly looks in VR, but it is compatible with a number of different headsets that are available on the market. And then just some other stuff, unprecedented. You'll see this, so I don't need to talk about all that. So the topics for the demo today, because this is all about Twinmotion, I'm going to do my best to kind of give a summary of all of the main features of the program and walk through the interface. In all of the demos I've done with Twinmotion, I will tend to start to get into detail in certain parts. So I'm going to try my best to kind of limit the amount of detail that I get into and keep my presentation to about a half hour, because I know that you'll have some questions at the end. And I would rather, if you do have questions, I'd rather show some things on the fly if I can. And for the questions that I can't answer, we'll be able to get back to you, in email, or we'll put out something on our website to answer anything that we can't get to in this hour. So with that, I will get right into the demo. Or actually, let me back up one step. So this is the progression I'm going to go through, linking and importing those different 3D options or 3D models. I'll just kind of briefly talk about that and show you the options for programs like Revit. I'll use as an example. I'll navigate through the user interface and show you how simple it is to understand. It's a really intuitive program. I'll go through some options of daylighting and artificial lighting, creating vegetation or placing vegetation within your scene, and then explain or show you what is included in the content library, as well as how we can customize that. And then finally, so this is kind of a progression of how you would work through setting up a Twinmotion scene. I'll show you how to output that to stills, animations, virtual reality, whatever it is your goal is for your output. I'll show you how to get to that. All right, so now into the demo. So first off, right now I do have a Twinmotion scene open, so I will get back to this one. But immediately I wanted to show everyone here on the call that in order to build a Twinmotion project, we could start from scratch. So we could essentially go to a new Twinmotion scene. This is sort of our blank canvas that I'm about to show you here. And there are ways you can really start to build in this. If you were just doing maybe a site or something, you can create landscape, change your background, whether it's urban or countryside. At the time, or currently, there are preset environment backgrounds, but you can do some different things and pull some tricks off to get your own environments in. But essentially, Twinmotion is meant as a landing pad for taking our other models in. So yes, we can bring in vegetation, we can bring in some simple geometry and different assets, but really those assets in Twinmotion are meant to build the context around what you've already designed and worked on in other programs. So we're not going to be using Twinmotion to do building design work, laying your floor plans out and placing roofs and walls and all of that. It's really meant to create the context around those designs. So the first thing then is, how do we get our models, how do we get our 3D objects into Twinmotion? And really we have two options. We can use this direct link, or we can do an import. So I have Revit open with just the sample Revit project that comes with Revit, this residential project. And I just want to point out that I do have this direct link plugin installed for Revit. It shows up as a tab inside of Revit, so Twinmotion 2020. And in here, I have basically one button to see in Twinmotion. This is really our direct link button, the settings for that, and then a third button for exporting this out. So this first option actually does create a direct link between Revit and into Twinmotion. So a simple click of a button. Now I did have Twinmotion open. If I didn't, it would prompt me, or it would automatically open the program up when you click that. And I will just say, let's start a new project. Do I want to save this one? No. And it is currently synchronizing the Revit model into Twinmotion. So a little weird because we still have that canvas, the starting canvas, but I can delete the ground. And what we get from that transfer is a direct link. And what this means is that as we're working in Revit, something I like to show in demo here is we can simultaneously work within Revit. So if I edit a wall or something like this and got a hole in it, checkbox. So it's not going to happen in real time as we're editing Revit, but going back to Revit, clicking the See in Twinmotion button, it's just refreshing or synchronizing those changes. Now when I jump back to Twinmotion, we can see that cut occurs. Now, I know for those Enscape users that might be on the call, Enscape is a bi-directional exchange. If we make a change to our Revit model, it's going to update the Enscape environment. If you update objects in Enscape, they will update back to Revit. This doesn't work the same way. It's really a one-directional exchange. So when we change in Revit, we can update to Twinmotion, but really we're not working in Twinmotion to update our Revit models. So it is just a one-directional exchange, but it's pretty nice because you still have that option. In all of the material assignments that you do inside of Twinmotion, I like to use this wood grain, a terrible looking map that's on this wall here. I can replace this with the Twinmotion material, and I'll get through all the content and material stuff later, so just bear with me here, but we can replace this, change the settings for that material, and save this Twinmotion file. It's not going to update the material back to Revit, but that material assignment still holds in Twinmotion. So as we go through Revit and we make changes to our walls or to our objects, the positioning and the material assignments are still maintained in Twinmotion. So you're not going to lose that material assignment every time you refresh or sync the Twinmotion file. You might also notice that these people automatically came to life going from Revit to Twinmotion. Don't step over the edge there, buddy. What's happening there in the direct link is all of our RPC objects that might be placed, and I'm not sure exactly how this works in SketchUp. I will assume that it works the same when we place RPC objects. But what Twinmotion is doing is it's detecting where the position of those RPC objects are, like these trees. And in the direct link exchange, it's actually replacing them with real Twinmotion vegetation and characters, like these animated people. Now, once they're in here, I notice this guy's walking over the rail. We can grab that person. We can change their position so that they're just standing and not walking off the edge. But it maintains the position of those, or the general position of those people. It's kind of a nice feature. And it's one that the direct link automatically does. Now, there are some drawbacks to doing the direct link. And one of them is if I click on this roof, for example, yes, I can assign a new material to it, But if we wanted to move any objects around, they are set in place. So in order to maintain that direct link functionality between the programs, the coordinates of these objects are pretty much locked down. So we can't start changing the model around or moving things, because the next time we sync it up, it's just going to go back to where it was before. Anyway, we can add to the scene. So we can start to add to the context and build things in, like our vegetation, putting new tree objects, people, cars, add to the landscape. Whatever you want to do in Twinmotion, you can do that and add to the scene. You just can't affect or change what you're getting from the model in a direct link. So cool feature, great for checking out better visualizations of your design as you're changing things around, much better than what you would get from rendering out of Revit, but there is a limitation there that we can't edit the objects. And that's where the import option kind of comes into play. So let me just go new scene here, clear this out. And without taking too much time in explaining this, because I do want to show all of the features in the next 20 minutes or so that I have. That third option in the direct link is export. So we can take a 3D view from programs like Revit or SketchUp, Rhino, ArchiCAD, use this export option. Now, Revit does have a native FBX export, but this Twinmotion export is essentially doing an FBX export, but there are a few additional options that are not available in the out-of-the-box FBX export that Revit has. And really the big one here is the textures. We can choose to copy our textures to a separate folder, so it maintains all of the Revit textures and puts them into a nice folder for us, so it organizes it. Or we do have the option to integrate the materials from Revit directly into the file, which in that direct link is kind of what we're seeing there. Those materials are tied to it. You also have the options here for exporting any vegetation that you might have placed in Revit, excluding your MEP families, which does include light fixtures, so we usually don't like to check that one. And you also have the option to include linked files. So I like to use this export rather than the direct link if I'm building a scene for a high-end visualization, just because I know that once I get into Twinmotion, I'm probably not going back and changing my design in Revit. But for those of you that do plan on making changes, you have the option either way. Okay, so I should point out one last thing here with the import export, just to show you the file formats that it does accept. So we do have the option to import geometry or landscape. Essentially, these accept the same, mostly the same types of files, except once they're in Twinmotion, we can do different stuff with them. So if we bring in geometry, our building, our walls, our doors, our windows, you can pick your file format, FBX, SKP, OBJ, Cinema 4D, or the Unreal Datasmith file. Those are the preferred formats for importing, but you do have all of these additional 3D formats. Move this over on my screen so we can see all of them. So a lot of common industry types of 3D formats that you can produce or export from other programs. They can be brought in. Really, the difference between these two is the top line can contain material information. The bottom line really doesn't. So everything is just sort of one solid object if you bring it in using one of those file types. And we have this all outlined on our website too, and I'll share a link at the end of the presentation to that. But besides that, you have some options when you go to import it in. Really, the primary difference between geometry and landscape is that if we do create a landscape, and landscape does accept a lot of the same formats like FBX, OBJ, Cinema 4D, it does take those coordinate files like a TXT file or an XYZ file, point files. The big thing here though, when you bring in an FBX, or I'm sorry, any landscape object, is that you can sculpt it inside of Twinmotion. So I'll show that with the native landscape tools, but just keep in mind that if you are using this, you do have the opportunity to sculpt your landscape, and you might have initially modeled it in a program like Civil 3D, now you can do some stuff and make it look a little bit better inside of Twinmotion. So beyond that, let me open up that previous file I had, this nice little cabin in the woods. And at this point, I like to show just how simple it is to navigate and learn the interface. So the interface is really built up of only 3 primary objects, really. We've got a library palette over here on the left, where you can navigate through this to get to anything from your materials to vegetation, objects, lights. So this is really our creating type of panel or creation library. And it's just broken down into folders like this. So that's on the left, and we can collapse that to free up some space on our screen. The right side, this is called the scene graph. So for those of you that are familiar with Revit, I guess it's kind of like your project browser or the family browser portion of the project browser inside of Revit. But this splits up depending on how we bring in our model. It's going to split things up based on categories or elements. And what's really great about this is we can control the visibility of these objects really easy, just like layer control. And you can select them as well. So there is a hierarchy to the scene graph. And depending on how you import your geometry in from other programs, we can control sort of that level of organization. So you have options when you import how you want that hierarchy to be split up. But for the sake of this, just know the scene graph is where we can go and explore the elements that we've either placed or imported in. You can search this and you can filter it as well. So really nice. And another thing I like to point out while I'm at it, if there's something that we want to get to quickly, maybe I want to see where this coffee table is, we can click it in the scene graph. Twinmotion has a bunch of hotkeys, and you can get to them through the help menu. Just the shortcuts here shows you all of the hotkeys and shortcuts for Twinmotion. It's in a PDF. So that's baked into the program. But when you click on an object, I just hit the shortcut key F to get to it, and it takes me right to that object. Let me see, why am I still in there we go. So you can do this too by clicking an object and typing F. It basically does a zoom extents around that object. So those are the 2 main parts of the interface. I do like to show statistics. It shows you basically the performance that's happening on your computer. Right now, and pretty much always when you're working in Twinmotion, it will tap out your GPU. So I'll talk about specs a little bit at the end, but you do want to have a nice graphics card. If you don't have a super high-end graphics card, so right now, and I have a RTX, a Quadro RTX 4000 for those of you that know about hardware. It's a pretty good mobile workstation graphics card, and it can handle pretty much anything I throw at it in Twinmotion. But if you don't have something as good as an RTX 4000, you can always change the preferences as you're working in the program. So right now I'm on ultra high quality, but if we did just have, kind of middle of the road workstation laptop with a dedicated graphics card, but maybe not the most up to date or the best graphics card, you can always revert the quality in real time down to medium. And it's just going to, in real time, it makes the scene look a little worse. But when you go to output, when you go to render or create your animations, it's still going to output at the highest quality. So this is sort of like, I like to call it sort of your working quality when you're working inside of Twinmotion. I'll bump mine back up to Ultra because why not? And as long as we get this green thumb here, we're good to go. At the bottom of the interface, this is, I don't know what the official title for this panel at the bottom, but I like to call it like my main command panel or my main command settings toolbar. On the left side, this kind of works through the progression of what you would do to build your scene up. So starting with importing it, working through the context of the project, and then tweaking settings, setting up your media, so images, videos, and then finally exporting. So it kind of works in that progression. If I click on the import, we can see that the cabin is the FBX import that was brought in here. Context allows you to start to build that site context, like creating vehicle paths or character paths, painting your vegetation, scattering vegetation, and then creating urban context. So this does have the option to pull in some conceptual massing, conceptual data from, I believe that it's called OpenStreetMaps. So it is a service that is plugged into Twinmotion automatically. We can grab like a city block or an area based on the location of our project, and it will bring in some greenscapes and some roads and building massing based on what's loaded into that OpenStreetMaps utility. So I won't do that now. It doesn't take too long, but it's kind of an added benefit where I don't really have too much time to talk about that specifically today, but we back up here. But that's about it for navigating. Now to actually move around the program, you can just use your mouse. So I'm just using my mouse to kind of pan around. And I do apologize if it's jumping a little bit on the GoToMeeting. On my screen, it's moving really, really smoothly. We just get some latency over these large WebEx or GoToMeeting presentations. So I'll try not to make everyone nauseous and move around too quickly, but we can pan around, we can orbit. And one great thing, if you're ever presenting in Twinmotion and you just want to walk someone through the model, you can go into like a walking mode, a video game type of mode, and navigate on the ground. So it's grounded right now. And I'll just try to go slowly here. We can change the speeds for the navigation, but I'll just kind of go quickly. But you are able to walk through the model. These doors in this model have a trigger built in that they will swing open, and you can build that in. It's pretty simple. But as you can see, I'm walking through, I can't walk through walls. I'm trying to, it's stopping. So it automatically detects solid objects as collision objects for physical geometry. So it's pretty nice. You can really easily navigate through the model this way and start to work through or walk through the environment. And if we want to do a fly through instead, I'll just hit the M, which is the quick key on my keyboard. And now I can fly through, which does allow you to go through walls. So you have the option to be like a ghost and go through stuff, or you have the option to be a human and walk through the model as normal. So pretty nice. All right. Now just quickly, let's see, we've got 15-ish minutes. So with the lighting, inside of Twinmotion, if we look up in the sky, it's a clear sky. So we do have the option to change the day lighting in Twinmotion. We can make it go from daytime to nighttime. We can affect the weather, and all of that is really done through our context settings. So what did I turn on here? I turned something on that's showing these graphics, which I didn't mean to, but let's see if I can find the folder that was turned on. Oh, I think it's called technical. Where is it? I'm not seeing it. It's probably right in front of me. Well, that's okay. I'll just go back to one of my images. So in order to affect the sky environment, we are able to actually just change either the location settings, so we can place where the project is located. We are able to set the time of the day, so you can see I'm moving the sun around by just shifting the time of the day. You can set the month and the year, and then you can also change your north angle. So you get this little compass here that will spin. I mentioned earlier that you are able to change those background environments. So that's just tied into location. Right now, there isn't one loaded in here. If we look, it just kind of looks like the horizon disappears, but you do have the ability to bring in some different ones. We're told that in the next release, and I'll talk about this towards the end of the presentation, but the next release, so right now we're kind of limited to what we have in these presets, but we should be able to load in HDR maps to create those background environments of our choosing in the future. And once one is selected, yes, you can rotate that around that spherical environment. So pretty nice. We go back to my settings here. Oops, I spelled Arial wrong. But I also like to point out that we are able to quickly adjust the weather. So if I just want to make my sky environment cloudy, we can move this to clouds. If we go sort of towards the middle, we can turn rain on, and it changes the ground and everything to show puddles. If we change the time of the season, we can start to get a snowy environment. So all of this stuff, in the past, if we were to render something or create this in 3ds Max, it would probably take a really, really long time to build different weather environments or to create still images of all of these different variations. Twinmotion makes it super easy. And for those of you that are into site and landscape development, we can also kind of place our vegetation, which is the next point of discussion here, but we can make it so that our vegetation is really young. We can show what the effect over time will be, planting trees and bushes and things like that and see where they're at. So we can change kind of globally the growth. And just as an added benefit, you can also animate this. So if we wanted to create a video of our trees growing like that over time, or the weather changing, you can store all of that into your animations and do some really cool stuff. So yeah, with the lighting there, I'm kind of sidetracked off of our lighting. We do have the option to change exposures, white balances, global illumination. So sort of the detail of how you would want to control some of your lighting settings in an environment. Let me just bounce back to my clean image here. Oops. Now I just updated it. That's okay. Go to this one. So beyond the daytime renderings, you also have the option to place artificial lighting. So I've done that in this file, and the exposure control is catching up to it. There we go. So as you're changing between times of the day, there are some really cool triggers if you have artificial lighting, like the uplighting I put on the outside of the building here. Hit this button G. These are they're called helpers. So keyboard shortcut, you can turn those on and off. But what I have here, and maybe I can't get to it because there they are, below the ground. But with light objects, you have all of these different controls, and these do support IES, photometric web files. So we can plug in specific shapes into our lights and create unique lights. But in this case, we can control the intensity of our lighting, make it dim, change the color temperature of that lighting. We're able to adjust the cone or the angle of the light, the attenuation, which is how far it goes, and then we are able to turn shadows on or off. I have them off right now because I moved these lights under the ground. If shadows were on, it would stop at the ground, so I made sure those shadows were off here because I don't really care about it showing the shadows with these uplights. But in interiors and stuff, you have that option. So lights can be found from our content library, and essentially you just drag and drop them into the scene to place them, and then you can control and adjust them however you want. So pretty easy there. And the other lights you might have noticed, for those of you that have ever worked in 3ds Max, I made these instance copies. So as I changed the properties of one light, it's changing all of my instance copies at the same time. So kind of a shortcut there for controlling down lighting, up lighting, interior lighting. So that's basically it with the lighting. We can turn this haze feature on, which will just make like dust particles inside of the light. It works really well if you're trying to show interior renderings and showing kind of sun rays or something coming through a window. You can plop an artificial light in, turn that hazing on, and it's going to make it look like it's kind of a dusty room with direct light coming in. It's a cool effect. Okay, back out. Back to daytime. So I won't paint this entire environment. All of the grass and everything is painted in here. So one option we do have inside of Twinmotion is to create these really nice landscapes and vegetation using either the vegetation paint, individually placing objects like our trees. As you can see, you can just drag and drop. They are parametric, so you can change the actual age of the tree to make it a baby tree or a mature tree. That isn't simply just scaling the tree either. You know, it's adding more branches to it. Branches go away as it gets older, so pretty awesome. These are all, like I said, parametric vegetation. We can turn that growth on, so when you do that global growing, it will affect it. Season, if we change to fall for deciduous trees, they will change the leaf color. I don't think these evergreen types of trees, the pine trees, did not change because they don't change color. But certain ones like the deciduous trees, if we change the weather or the season to winter, all of the leaves will fall off and we would just see the branches, and we can also turn wind on. So pretty cool with trees. Now for the vegetation scatter, this stuff's awesome. We have these little folders for different landscape objects like detailed grasses, grass and flowers, bushes, trees. With this scatter tool, we're able to take different elements from our libraries, drag them down to our content panel here, and sort of set a randomization of how we want things to be painted or scattered. And what this allows us to do is paint using a paintbrush. It's going to use a combination of these different assets. See this little globe here? I can change the diameter of that globe, make it smaller, and really just start to paint in the grass. Yes, you can control the settings of some of these objects individually, but if I wanted shorter grass or anything, I would just pick an option that was more like regular turf than wild grass to make it look a little bit more manicured than it is right now. Same thing, you can do that scatter with trees. If we want to start to erase any of this away, we can erase it. So you really just are just painting, vegetation across the ground, clearing stuff out. So wish it was that easy, right? In real life. Cool, make a nice dirt path. Beyond that, now I mentioned earlier when we bring in a landscape, what's kind of neat is that we're able to paint the landscape. Actually, this terrain doesn't look like it is set to be a landscape. So let me just drag this in and I'll delete it in a second. But with the terrain map, when we bring in a terrain map or import landscape in, another option that we do have, it's kind of loading up here, is it's below the ground. Let's see, we can move it. Oh. Try to get in here close. I don't know why that's so far zoomed out, but this flat terrain, I'll try to do it from this far away just to show you or give you an idea of what tools you have. You do have the option to sculpt the terrain, which will actually do a push-pull, build up a diameter. So it might be hard to see from this far, but there's a little dot on that terrain and we can start to sculpt it, to make hills and make the terrain a little bit different. If I zoomed in, it'd probably look a little bit better. We can use all of these different tools to raise the ground, to dig it, to make it kind of random or noisy. You make this really large diameter, so pretty neat. It's just painting, just like with that paint tool I was showing with the landscape, except we're sculpting the terrain. And lastly, with the landscape, you can also paint it. So right now we have a nice green grass type of terrain. We can use this paint tool, pick different material options, increase the diameter, and start to paint different ground conditions and stuff. So really cool with surfaces and landscape. It is sometimes a little bit wonky if you get too out of control like I did here, but if you do take the time, you can make some really nice undulating surfaces and paint them and make it look realistic, you know, making dirt surfaces around trees and stuff just to give it that little extra touch of realism. So then finally, let's see, I've only got, a couple minutes here. I want to open up Q&A because I'm sure there's quite a bit of questions coming in. Let me delete the landscape. All right, let's just get back to the site. There we go. So with context and materials, all of these little objects that we're seeing in here are just placed from the out-of-the-box content library that comes with Twinmotion. So I kind of went really quickly through vegetation and landscape and the lighting, but we also have objects and materials as well as characters, vehicles, different tools for measuring if we want to show notes. But for objects, there's really nice libraries of these different chairs and things. So these are just out of the box. You know, they come with purchase of Twinmotion. You can drag and drop them in, rotate them, use your eyedropper to pick the material, change its color, do this stuff really, really easily. And it doesn't, you know, the one great thing I love about Twinmotion is you don't have to be a ArcViz whiz or professional to really make things look nice and change things. So messing around with the objects is great. So let's just point out a couple of other things here. So we have all of those different static objects like, you know, office chairs, tables, desks that we can bring in. There are also some pretty cool things called particle systems. So if you wanted to show smoke or fire or water, these little particle systems we can set up. And, you know, I probably wouldn't want to do this inside of a house, but maybe setting up a bonfire or something. But as you can see, just the power of the engine here inside of Twinmotion, it can handle this stuff no problem. Some of it might remind you of like a video game, like setting up like a colored smoke area or something like that. But this is just a particle system that can be placed and moved around, scaled. So you could do quite a bit with this stuff. And then finally with the objects, I like to show off that we are able to place characters. So Twinmotion has a set of characters from a third-party program called AXYZ or Axes. And these characters, some of them are animated, so we can drag and drop them. They are parametric, so we can change. Most of them just have the change of their the color of their clothes, but you can make different animations: speaking, idle, sitting, dancing. So pretty fun stuff. There are actually different options for dancing, whether, you know, I guess what day of the week it is. If it's Friday, you really want to get going crazy. But you can change their animation. You can bring in groups of people. Might take it a second to load all of them up. Oh, why'd they go all the way out there? Let's bring these people closer. There we go. And when you're really wanting to have some fun, you can even bring in animals, including cows. The butterflies are a really nice touch. Got some great names too, like the birds here, the Death Squad. So the content is great. It comes with so much content. And one last thing here before I go to the output, we're also able to build our own custom user libraries. I did want to show this, but I know we're running short on time. You can download different assets from other sources, import them in as objects inside of Twinmotion, assign materials to them, and then store them. This is called your user library. So you can store custom materials, you can store custom objects, like this dragon statue. One in the tree, there we go. And one thing that you get with a purchase of Twinmotion is access to the Quixel Megascans library. So I actually grabbed this, this object from the Megascans library, and they do come with materials, they come with bump maps. It's pretty much the entire asset. We can build that into Twinmotion, store it in a custom library, and then use it over and over again throughout our different projects. I should have pointed out too, with materials, we do have presets for different materials that can be dragged and dropped really easily. You can change the properties of the materials quickly. And just like with this 3D asset that I brought in, you are able to create custom materials. And it's just really a matter of tying in the maps, the texture maps, the bump maps to your materials, and then tweaking these predefined settings to make the materials look really nice. So let's see, I'll try to get this in the next minute. To output media, we can store and create different images like I was showing you earlier. So we can save settings or the states of an image, like this winter one, jump quickly to a nice daytime image that I save. I can go, I don't know why this one's not previewing nighttime, but as you can see here, it is now a nighttime render. Same here. Now with images, it is really easy to create new images. You just kind of go to where you want within the model, create a new image, and it bookmarks it within the project. So now you can export it as a still. You can change the settings like I did before with those other ones if you want. And then when it's time to export, or let me jump back to media just to point the other ones out. Yes, we can create those panorama, those 360-degree views. Video creation, super, super easy. Just like with the images, we can go create video, and it's just a matter of creating keyframes. So if this is my first keyframe, I might navigate up into the air, create a second keyframe here, and then it's just going to play that through animation, and then we can export it either as individual frames, or we can export it as an MP4 file. So you have the options of how you want to work with the videos. Phasing, I'll show kind of a neat one here that's stored. So without getting into the weeds too much, we are able to produce a phasing timeline of the project, which essentially just controls the visibility of the different elements that we bring into our projects. And then we can set that phasing in a video. So I think I have, let's see. Yeah, I have this one set up that shows sort of a construction timeline inside of Twinmotion. So just to give you an idea of what this looks like, I'll set it to 20 seconds, hit the play button. So in a video animation with phasing, it's just going through that timeline, turning the visibility of objects on and off to show that construction simulation. So, sorry, I know I said it was going to be like 40 minutes and I'm at 47. So finally, the last thing, when you're ready to export videos or images, you just go to this last button, pick one or all of the images or other media that you want to export. You click this button to start export. And I did preset some of my images before this presentation. So just to show you the quality that you're getting, it is extremely, it renders the stuff extremely fast. So what's that other one that was better? I was showing Lori before the presentation and I must have closed out. Let's just go through these. There we go. So, you know, night renderings with starlight, interior lighting, stuff that's really tough to do. Other programs, you know, to change or create iterations of it. Just really quick and easy export. And the ability to render this stuff out. So with any of these real-time rendering programs, the beauty of them is that you're really doing a majority of the work, or the processing power is baked into the program itself. So when you go to render, it's doing a few things to refine the image, but it's not going to give you a render time like you're used to in 3ds Max, where you click the render button and then have to wait hours to get the output. If I pick an image, like this daytime image that I selected, start the export, save it, watch how fast this is. It's probably less than 10 seconds, I'm going to have the image finished. So there it is, it's done. Extremely quick rendering times, and you have all of these different options to quickly output videos, images, animations. We've got 10 minutes, so I think I'll stop there and try to answer some questions.